No, as the president has stated, it was a bad deal that was cut by the UK and Prime Minister Starmer as it pertains to Diego Garcia, as evidenced by limitations that our troops could face in how we use that island. Yes.
All right. I appreciate that. My understanding is that the classified information and unclassified.
There are two types of support in Washington. The first is real support. The second is the kind of support that comforts you while also cornering you. On the morning of Tuesday, May 12, 2026, before a session of the Senate Appropriations Defense Subcommittee, Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy approached Hegseth and whispered in his ear, "Don't let them take you down." It sounds like a friendly reassurance, but those who have watched Kennedy before know that such words are never just consolation, and indeed it was. Kennedy both supported Hegseth that day and asked the most uncomfortable questions. This is Kennedy's special art. He enters like a friend, speaks the truth, and leaves the other person both comforted and cornered. And when Hegseth was completely engulfed in silence at the end of the session, the reason for that silence was not an attack from the opposition party, it was the weight of a truth coming from his own side. Scene: 2 hearings, 1 day, endless questions. May 12, 2026 was an extremely busy day for Hegseth. It started at 8 in the morning with the House Appropriations Subcommittee. It continued in the Senate in the afternoon. 2 hearings in a row to account for a war that has lasted for months. This round of Hegseth's appearance before Congress took on a different tone compared to previous hearings. The name-calling and tense exchanges that characterized previous sessions were absent this time. The subcommittee chairman and ranking member noted that the hearing was more professional. "It should be like this for these kinds of hearings," it was commented. This change of tone was not a coincidence. Hegseth had remained on an aggressive line in previous hearings, declaring Democrats the greatest enemy, but this approach had put him in an indefensible position in the public eye. Now there was a more measured, more controlled Hegseth. But the questions hadn't changed, and Kennedy's questions brought to the surface the truths behind this measured tone one by one. "Don't let them break you," Kennedy's first message. Before the Senate hearing began, Kennedy approached Hegseth and said, "Don't let them break you." This sentence provides a framework that gives meaning to the entire hearing. Kennedy shows that he supports Hegseth, but there is also an implicit message: you can be brought down. This is a comfort, but also a warning. And Kennedy's message to Hegseth didn't end there. Throughout the hearing, Kennedy took on both the protective and questioning roles. He defended the Democrats, but also clearly laid out the missing dimensions of the war. Kennedy directly told Hegseth, "Don't try to convince your Democratic friends. It's not worth it. Don't raise your blood pressure and focus on other issues." This advice may seem like a typical political strategy suggestion, but underneath it lies a much deeper truth. Kennedy was telling Hegseth, you don't have the right weapons to defend the legitimacy of this war. Instead of trying to silence the opposition, focus on answering the questions you can't actually answer. And it is at this point that Kennedy's friendly advice truly came into play. Strait of Hormuz, the cost of a closed door. The central issue of this hearing revolved around a question that has remained unanswered for months. When will the Strait of Hormuz be opened? The Senate hearing ended with Democratic senators repeatedly demanding clarity from the Secretary of Defense on what he planned to do to reopen the strait. Hegseth, on the defensive, claimed that the questions overlooked the U.S. military's successes in the war. Hegseth's defensive reflex was inconsistent because no one was questioning the U.S. military's combat capacity in the field. The real debate was focused on whether the tactical victories achieved truly served a strategic goal and how this situation could be presented as a success while the strait was still closed. Senate Appropriations Committee Chairwoman, Republican Senator Susan Collins, asked whether the Trump administration had anticipated Iran closing the strait. Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey's answer was pro forma. The president is briefed on military options that have been carefully vetted for all scenarios. Collins was not satisfied. In my view, there is a different plan almost every day for dealing with this issue. Almost every day, a different plan. This is from a member of the Republican chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, and this assessment directly contradicted Hegseth's claim of perfect transparency. The closure of the world's busiest oil transit route has a real impact on American gasoline prices, and Congress has not been given a clear plan for when that result will end.
Request for transparency. We didn't get a full cost breakdown. The most concrete exchange on the transparency front during the hearing occurred over budget questions. The ranking member of the subcommittee, Democratic Representative Betty McCollum, repeatedly emphasized their request. We asked for a full update on ammunition levels. It hasn't been provided. McCollum added, "You don't even provide a real breakdown of the cost of this war." This request is not just a political maneuver by the opposition party, an attempt to exercise the legal oversight authority of the parliament. The Constitution grants Congress the power of the purse. This authority requires knowing where the spending is going. While ammunition levels can be kept secret, the overall cost structure of the war should be shared with the public, at least in outline. Hegseth said while rejecting the claim that ammunition was running out, he acknowledged that the Trump administration was trying to ramp up arms production, making the two statements, "ammunition is not running out" and "we are urgently increasing production," contradictory. The fact that something is not running out does not require you to quickly replenish it. The urgency of renewal indicates the presence of a concern about depletion, and this contradiction set the stage for Kennedy's sharpest move in the trial. Kennedy's real question, are you winning or are you waiting? Kennedy greeted Hegseth with a friendly piece of advice, but throughout the hearing, he did not shy away from asking questions that brought both Hegseth and the Democrats face to face with the truth. Kennedy did not directly embrace the administration's victory claim, noting that the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, but he also noted that he agreed with Trump's argument that the blockade created long-term leverage over Iran. He criticized them as well, suggesting that the Democrats had already lost. This is the essence of the balance Kennedy struck that day. Neither full support nor full criticism, but precisely within this balance, he made the most disturbing observation. Kennedy said, "The strait is closed, but if the blockade continues, if nothing goes in and nothing goes out, won't Iran eventually have to shut down its own oil fields? There are half of the low-pressure oil fields. Once it is shut down, it cannot be opened again. Am I missing something?" This question seemingly supports Hegseth. It carries the message, you are right, there is leverage. But there is a much deeper question. When, how, and under what conditions will this leverage come into play? And what will be said to the public and Congress about reaching that point? Hegseth answered this question by saying, "The president says we have all the cards," and he's right. However, this answer did not address Kennedy's main question, because there was no clear definition of a strategic goal. There was only a presentation of the current situation in a positive light. The reason Hegseth remained silent at this point was that Kennedy was not asking, "Did you win?" but rather, "When, how, and with what strategy will you act to truly win?" And moreover, there was no clear answer to this question either. Collins' criticism, a different plan every day. The harshest criticism from the Republican side during this hearing came from Senate Appropriations Chair Susan Collins, in addition to Kennedy. Collins criticized the Trump administration's current Iran strategy, saying, "To me, there seems to be a different plan for dealing with this issue almost every day." Collins had voted with Democrats last month in a failed effort to block the conflict. Every day, a different plan. This is the exact opposite of strategic clarity. Transparency does not just mean sharing cost figures. It means explaining consistently how to reach which target. And according to Collins, there was no consistency. In the same hearing, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell also expressed serious concerns about NATO and alliance relations in Europe. NATO is the most important military alliance in history, McConnell said, adding that some European allies believe the U.S. is retreating from its leadership role. Watch these two Republican voices, Collins and McConnell. Both have long been seen as institutional representatives of the Republican Party, and both posed serious questions to Hegseth regarding transparency and strategy during this hearing. This is no longer just a Democratic critique, a structural concern coming from their own ranks.
History is not on your side. Murphy's summary. Perhaps the most severe picture in the hearing emerged during the questioning by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Murphy painted a stark picture of the fundamental failure of the strategy in Iran to Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Kane. The strait is still closed. The increase in gasoline prices and basic consumer goods is causing an economic crisis domestically. Serious inconsistencies between Trump's early declaration of a strategic victory in Iran and intelligence reports revealing that the regime retained a significant portion of its previous missile and drone capabilities have come to light. This inconsistency was also the backdrop for Kennedy's questions. It is said to be a victory, but the Bosphorus is closed. It is said that we are winning, but the capacity is largely preserved. They say there is a plan, but they are not being transparent with Congress. And against this backdrop, Hegseth's answer was always the same. What would be the cost of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons? The power of this rhetoric is undeniable. The nuclear threat is a real concern. But this question does not answer the demand for transparency. It doesn't cover the lack of a cost breakdown, and it doesn't explain the inconsistency of the plan that changes every day. As the record $0.5 trillion defense budget was being evaluated in congressional subcommittees, lawmakers were simultaneously questioning how a war estimated to cost $5 billion would be financed, and the concurrent discussion of these two scales was highlighting a structural inconsistency in the budget system. Republican Representative Ken Calvert clearly summarized the situation. I hope a supplemental appropriations bill can come soon. We know the ammunition issue. We know the cost of this conflict. We know the cost of other conflicts. We need to make payments to the accounts that will be used to finance this ongoing operation. So the $0.5 trillion defense budget does not fully cover the war items related to Iran, yet the additional funding, which is said to be close to $100 billion, has not yet been presented to Congress, and the detailed cost breakdown has not been shared. This raises the question of what Congress is actually approving, the continuation of a war with an unclear and incomplete picture, where the total cost has not been determined. Conclusion: the weight of silence. When the hearing ended, Kennedy told Hegseth, "Don't try to convince your Democratic friends. It's not worth it." This sentence appears to be a political advice, but at the same time it's an indirect observation. You can't answer these questions, so don't even try to answer them. The hearing ended with Democratic senators repeatedly pressing Hegseth for a clear plan to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Hegseth, however, went on the defensive, arguing that the questions ignored military successes. Military successes. This phrase became the refuge Hegseth resorted to throughout the entire trial. Every concrete question was left unanswered by being directed toward this general framework. But Kennedy's question shattered that framework, because Kennedy was not questioning military successes. He was asking, where are these successes going? How is this process going to end? And when is this picture going to be transparently presented to Congress? And Hegseth was left in complete silence in front of a senator from his own side. If you want to follow this kind of analysis, subscribe and see you at the next hearing.